Most people think the avoidant walks away untouched. They think he closes the door, shrugs off the weight of what he did, and gets on with his life like nothing was ever exchanged between the two of you. They think the one who leaves is the one who wins. And that is, quite honestly, one of the most misunderstood pieces of relationship psychology I can think of. Because what actually happens to an avoidant after he betrays someone who loved him well is almost the opposite of what he told himself would happen. He didn't just lose you. He lost the one place where he was allowed to be a full human being without having to earn it every single morning. And he had no idea, none, that walking away from that would follow him for years. You know the moment I mean. You're sitting somewhere quiet right now, maybe at the end of a long day, maybe with the lamp on low, and you're replaying the exact phrase he used. I'm just not in a place for this. I need space to figure myself out. You deserve better than what I can give right now. And you've been turning that sentence over in your hands for weeks or months, trying to decide if you misread it, if there's a version of it where he comes back, if there's a way to hold still enough and be understanding enough that he'll remember what he had. I want you to stop turning it over. Not because the sentence didn't hurt. It did. But because the sentence was never the full story. The full story is what happens to a man who tells himself he isn't ready, and then watches the one person who saw him clearly stop reaching for him. Here's the thing. When an avoidant betrays you, and I'm using betrayal in the wider sense, not just the dramatic sense, I mean the quiet betrayals too, the emotional withdrawal, the sudden coldness, the let's just be friends after months of intimacy, the vanishing at the exact moment you needed him to stay. He tells himself a very specific story on the way out. The story is that he's protecting himself. The story is that he's protecting you. The story is that he isn't capable of what you are offering, and it would be kinder, in the long run, to step aside now. That's the narrative he leaves the room with. He genuinely believes it. And for the first few weeks, maybe even the first few months, that narrative holds. He feels the relief he was chasing. He gets his space back. The pressure of being loved that closely, that specifically, that attentively lifts, and he can breathe again in the way he thinks he wanted to breathe. He mistakes that first breath for freedom. And here's what most people miss. That breath doesn't last, because the pressure he thought was suffocating him wasn't actually the pressure of your love. It was the pressure of being seen. And when he walks away, he doesn't walk into freedom. He walks into a room where nobody knows him the way you did. Nobody remembers the small things. Nobody notices when he's off. Nobody asks the second question after he gives the easy answer to the first. He starts to move through his days, lighter. Yes, but lighter in a way that eventually starts to feel like weightlessness. And weightlessness, if you sit inside it long enough, starts to feel like drifting. That's the first crack. He doesn't know it yet, but that's the first crack. Let me be clear about something. This is not a revenge story. I'm not telling you this so you can sit at home imagining him crying in the shower. That kind of thinking keeps you tethered to him, and the whole point of what I'm about to say is that the tether needs to loosen. From your side first, always from your side first. I'm telling you the psychology of what actually happens because I want you to understand that the outcome he's headed toward has nothing to do with anything you need to do. It's not something you make happen by texting the right thing or holding out the right length of time. It's something that unfolds inside him because of what he chose. His choice made his consequence. Your only job is to stop being available to interrupt it. Now, let me walk through this with you one piece at a time. In the first stage after the betrayal, he is riding on the momentum of his own decision. He tells himself he did the right thing. He might even feel a little proud of it, proud of being self-aware, proud of not stringing you along, proud of having, in his mind, some kind of emotional maturity that let him call it before it got worse. He'll say things to his friends like, "I just wasn't in a place to give her what she needed." He'll say it like it's a virtue. He'll say it like he's the one who was mature enough to see the limitations. And in that framing, you become the person who wanted too much, rather than the person who simply wanted the ordinary thing. Presence, honesty, the courage to stay. This is emotional immaturity dressed up as insight. It's the costume avoidance wear when they don't want to look at what they actually did. But that costume only fits for a while, because the world, eventually, starts asking him questions he can't answer with that script. He'll go on other dates and notice that no one asks him how his day was in the way you did. He'll go through a bad week at work and reach for his phone and realize the person he would have told is no longer the person he can tell. He'll hear a song, and it won't be a song about you at first. That's not how it happens. It'll be a song about nothing in particular, and he'll suddenly be aware of a strange quiet in his chest, and he won't have the vocabulary to name it because he's spent his whole adult life not letting himself name things like that. That quiet is the beginning of the echo, and here's the part he never sees coming. The echo doesn't get quieter. It gets louder the longer he tries to ignore it. Picture this. It's about 11 at night, some Tuesday 4 or 5 months after he ended things. He's alone in his apartment. The lights are low. He's scrolling on his phone, half watching something, and without meaning to, he lands on an old photo of the two of you. Not a posed one, a real one. You laughing at something, he said. That specific laugh, in the specific light of a specific afternoon he had completely forgotten about until this exact second. And he stares at it longer than he wants to. He doesn't cry. He doesn't post anything. He doesn't text anyone. He just sits with it. And in that silence, for the first time since he left, he thinks, quietly, without permission, I don't think I'm going to find that again. He doesn't know what to do with that thought. So he puts the phone down. He goes to bed. He tells himself he was tired, but it stayed. That thought stayed, and it's going to keep coming back. Here's the truth about avoidance. They don't process in real time. They process on a delay. When you were in the relationship, offering him your full self, he couldn't feel the value of it. He was too busy managing his own nervous system, too busy protecting himself from the perceived threat of being loved that closely. The value only becomes visible to him in the absence. That is the cruel arithmetic of avoidant psychology. He needs you to be gone before he can see what you were. And by the time he sees it, the version of you he could have had is no longer the version of you that exists. I want you to sit with that, because that's the thesis of everything I'm about to say. The you he rejected doesn't exist anymore. The woman who was waiting, who was patient past the point of dignity, who was offering warmth to someone who kept flinching from it. She is not the woman he is now going to encounter if he ever tries to come back. And he will try. Not all of them try, but most of them try. Not because they've suddenly grown, because they've suddenly noticed. Those are two different things, and I need you to hear me on that distinction, because it is going to be the difference between you being taken in a second time and you standing on your own ground. Here's what's actually happening underneath all of this. When you go quiet after he ends it, when you don't chase, when you don't argue, when you don't send the long text explaining why he's making a mistake, when you don't orbit around him waiting for his mind to change, you create a vacuum. And a vacuum in human psychology doesn't stay empty. Nature won't allow it. Something has to rush in to fill it. And in his case, what rushes in is his own mind, his own memory, his own quiet, unsupervised reckoning with what he chose. He wanted the space. You gave him the space. And the space, as it turns out, is not a spa. The space is a room with only him in it, and the walls slowly become mirrors. Think about it like this. When two people are in a relationship, they're each holding one end of a story. You had your end. He had his. As long as you were both pulling, the story had tension, it had shape, it had somewhere it was going. When he let go of his end, he expected the whole story to collapse in your hands, and he expected you to be the one holding all the weight. He expected you to plead. He expected you to renegotiate. He expected you to soften the terms of your own worth so that he could stay on the edge of your life without having to commit to being in it. He didn't expect you to let go too. He expected you to hold on for the both of you. That is the choreography avoidants unconsciously rely on. And when you refuse to dance that choreography, when you let your end of the story drop, he is left holding a rope that goes nowhere. He didn't expect the silence. He expected the pursuit. And the silence is what does the work. Silence from you is not a punishment. I want to be careful with you on this point because there are corners of the internet that will tell you to go silent as a manipulation, as a tactic to make him miss you, as a way to force his return. That's not what I'm talking about. That kind of silence has an ear pressed to the wall. It's still oriented around him. The silence that reshapes your dignity and incidentally unsettles him is oriented around you. It's the silence of a woman who has picked her own life back up and stopped waiting to be picked. It's the silence of a woman who has re-entered her friendships, gone back to the gym, opened the book she'd stopped reading, called her sister, cooked herself a real meal, and gradually rebuilt the interior of her days without him at the center of them. That silence is magnetic not because it's designed to be. It's magnetic because it's real. And real is the one thing an avoidant cannot manufacture on his own and cannot find in the people he replaces you with. Here's something most people don't see coming. When he starts to date again, and he doesn't find what he's looking for because he doesn't know what he's looking for. He's looking for the ease he felt with you without the intimacy that produced that ease. He wants the warmth of home without the vulnerability of building one. He goes on dates and finds women who are perfectly lovely, perfectly attractive, perfectly available, and he cannot understand why he keeps coming home feeling emptier than when he left. He starts to blame the women. He tells himself none of them are quite right. He tells himself he's picky. He tells himself he just hasn't found the person yet. What he can't say out loud, even to himself, is that he had the person and he walked out of the room, and every room he's walked into since has been slightly the wrong shape. And here's the part nobody's going to like hearing, but it's the part that matters most. He didn't lose you because he wasn't ready. He lost you because he wasn't willing. Those are two different things, and avoidants survive by conflating them. Not ready implies a timer. It implies that if you just waited, he would have eventually arrived. Not willing implies a choice. It implies that he was capable of what you needed, but chose not to offer it because the cost to him felt higher than the reward. When you understand that distinction, you stop leaving a chair at the table for him because you stop believing that the chair was ever going to be filled by someone who kept telling you the room was too warm. I want to pause on that for a second, because a lot of women hold on for years to men who told them in perfectly gentle language that they were not willing. And the women, being generous, being hopeful, being kind, translate not willing into not ready yet. And then they wait. They wait through birthdays. They wait through holidays. They wait through the friend's wedding they went to alone. They wait through the promotion he didn't celebrate with them. They wait through their own quiet erosion, mistaking it for patience. And the man, on the other side of that waiting, is not becoming ready. He's becoming comfortable. Comfortable in the exact orbit she agreed to occupy. Comfortable in the knowledge that she will still be there whenever he decides to look up. That's not patience on her side. That's a slow forfeiting of self-respect dressed up as loyalty. And I need you to notice, if any of this describes you, that the waiting was never going to be the thing that changed him. The waiting was the thing that changed you. Now here's what changes him. What changes him is the moment he realizes the waiting has stopped. Not the moment he sees you post something. Not the moment a friend tells him you look well. Not the moment your name comes up at a party. Those are surface signals. And they matter, but they aren't the thing that does the work. The thing that does the work is much quieter than that. It's the moment, and this moment comes for almost all of them when he reaches out, not necessarily to get back together, almost never that clean. He reaches out with something soft and low stakes. A song lyric, a memory, a hey, I hope you're doing well. A birthday text arriving at 11:47 p.m., just under the wire, as if the lateness itself is his plausible deniability. And what he is genuinely, secretly checking for in that message, even if he wouldn't phrase it this way, is whether the door is still ajar. Whether you are still in some corner of yourself, oriented around him, whether he still has a place in your inner life, he is checking the temperature of the room he walked out of. And when the room has cooled, when your response is late or short or warm but not warm the way it used to be, or absent altogether, something happens inside him that he was not prepared for. He assumed that his exit had frozen you in the position he left you in. He assumed that whenever he chose to walk back into the room would still be waiting exactly as he remembered it. Because that's how avoidance thinks. Avoidance believes distance is neutral. Avoidance believes silence is a pause button. Avoidance is genuinely stunned to discover that time in your absence has kept moving and that you, in that time, have kept becoming. He didn't expect you to have grown. He expected you to have waited. And the discovery that you did not wait is the beginning of a very particular kind of grief that avoidants are almost uniquely unequipped to handle. Because here's the mechanism. An avoidant survives emotionally by keeping his options in a state of soft availability. He doesn't want to be pinned, but he also doesn't want the door fully closed. He wants you at arm's length, close enough to reach if he ever decides he wants to, far enough that he doesn't have to feel the daily reality of choosing you. He wants the possibility of you without the responsibility of you. And when you close the door, not slam it, just close it. With a kind of quiet finality, you take away the option that his whole nervous system was quietly relying on. He didn't just lose access to you as a girlfriend. He lost you as a fallback, as a mirror, as the person who knew him without needing an introduction. That is a specific and unusual kind of loss, and it hits harder than he ever imagined it would, because he never let himself imagine it at all. I want to walk through this with you one piece at a time, because this is the part that reshapes his whole life, and I want you to see it clearly, not so you can gloat, but so you can stop worrying about him. He begins to notice gradually that the people he replaces you with don't hold, they pass through. He can't build depth with them, because he never built depth with anyone until you, and he doesn't know how he did it with you. He was mostly just sitting in the room while you did the emotional work of building. He didn't know he was benefiting from a skill. He thought he was just in a good relationship. He didn't see that the good was you. And now, without you, he keeps ending up in rooms that don't feel like anything, and he can't work out why. He starts to have moments where he wants to text you and then doesn't. He starts to draft messages and delete them. He starts to check whether you've viewed something. He starts to look for you in the small digital corners where people used to leave traces of themselves. And these are behaviors he would have found pathetic in another man 6 months ago. And he can't quite face the fact that he is now that man. That is a very particular kind of humbling, and it is happening to him quietly, without you needing to know about it. You do not have to witness it for it to be real. And this is where the image I want you to hold on to starts to build. Because when he first left, he thought of your absence as a void, an empty space where you used to be, easily filled with something else, someone else, some other distraction. But a void, sat in long enough, becomes a vacuum. And a vacuum starts to pull. And what a vacuum pulls when there's nothing else to pull is his own memory of you. And memory, once it has a vacuum to fill, doesn't stay accurate. It amplifies. He remembers you not as you were, but as the best version of what you were. The laugh, the warmth, the specific way you understood him without him having to explain. The vacuum becomes an echo, and the echo becomes a weight. And the weight sits on his chest in the small hours of the night when there is no distraction left. And eventually the weight becomes an inquiry. A real, uncomfortable, unavoidable question that he cannot outrun. What did I do? And who was I protecting? And from what? And the inquiry, if he lets himself feel it, becomes a reckoning. And the reckoning is not a place from which he emerges as the man you needed. The reckoning is a place from which he emerges, if he does the work, as a man who might one day be capable of being what someone needs. That someone is very rarely you. That's the part women hate to hear, but it's the part that's true. The one who does the work becomes ready for the next person. The one who left you was not ready for you. Those are two different sentences, and they do not resolve into a reunion. Now let me say something about you, because I've spent a lot of this talking about him, and this is not really about him. This is about what you are becoming while he is becoming that. Because in the same months that his life has been quietly emptying, yours has been quietly filling, and you might not feel it yet. You might still be at the stage where the ache is louder than the growth. That's normal. That's the order it happens in. Ache first, growth underneath it. The growth doesn't announce itself. It happens in the small, boring, unremarkable choices. The night you chose not to text him, the morning you went to the gym anyway, the dinner you ate at the table instead of on the couch, the friend you called instead of the ex you almost called, the book you finished, the walk you took, the tears you cried into a pillow that were not sent to him as a screenshot. Every single one of those choices was a brick, and you have been laying bricks whether or not you knew you were building. Here's what most people miss. The woman who is grieving with dignity is not the same woman a week later. She is not the same woman a month later, and she is absolutely, categorically, not the same woman 6 months later. The person he could come back to, if he came back today, would be someone he cannot casually reopen a door with, because you are no longer the woman who left the door open. You are the woman who moved. You are the woman who rebuilt the room. And a man who wants to walk back into that room finds, on arrival, that the locks are different and the arrangement of the furniture is not something he recognizes, and the smell of the place is different, and, most of all, that the woman standing in it is looking at him with a kind of calm curiosity rather than desperate hope. That look from you is the moment his whole narrative collapses. He didn't expect you to look at him like that. He expected you to look at him with relief. And when you don't, when your eyes are steady and your voice is warm but ungrasping and your life is visibly intact behind you, he understands in one silent second exactly what he lost. That is the moment his life quietly rearranges itself around a regret he will carry for a long time. You don't need to make that happen. You just need to keep laying bricks. And here is where I want to be practical with you, because I think a lot of coaches speak in abstractions and then leave the listener wondering what to actually do at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night when the ache comes back. So let me be practical. First, pick up the phone and call the friend you have been slightly avoiding because you didn't want to be a burden about him again. Call her. Talk about something else. Ask about her life. Let yourself be pulled back into the ecosystem of people who love you without conditions. The relationship with him made your world small. Widen it. That is not a metaphor. Widen it physically this week. Second, move your body. I'm not going to give you a program. I'm not going to tell you to run a marathon. I'm just going to say what every honest coach knows. The body holds what the mind cannot yet say. And if you leave it there, it stays there. Walk, stretch, do something that is slightly harder than you feel like doing. Sweat one time this week for you and not for anyone's photograph of you. Third, retire the loop. You know the loop I mean. The one where you replay his last message. Imagine his response to your imagined message. Rehearse the confrontation you'll never have. Script the reunion you're not going to script. That loop is a full-time job you did not apply for. Retire it. Not by suppressing it, by replacing it. Every time it starts, put your attention somewhere physical and real. The kettle, the window, the book, the friend on the other end of the phone. You are not going to think your way out of the loop. You are going to live your way out of it, one small redirect at a time. Fourth, allow yourself to be sad without turning the sadness into evidence. The sadness is not evidence that you should reach out. The sadness is not evidence that he was the one. The sadness is not evidence that you can't do this. The sadness is just weather. It moves. It has moved before. It will move again. Let it move without booking it a return flight to him. And fifth, this one is the most important. Stop auditioning for the return. I've been careful the whole way through this to say the same thing in different ways, and I'll say it once more plainly. If your growth is a costume you are wearing for the day he sees you again, it isn't growth, it's rehearsal. And rehearsal, at some level he can smell, is still oriented around him. Real growth doesn't perform, real growth just is. When your life becomes fuller because you like your life fuller, when your friendships deepen because you enjoy the friendships, when your body feels stronger because you enjoy feeling strong, when your evenings are quieter because you like the quiet, that is when the shift becomes irreversible. And ironically, that is the version of you that is most magnetic. Not because magnetism was the point, because magnetism is what happens when a woman stops asking permission to exist at her own full size. Here is what I want you to hold on to. He did not walk away because there was something wrong with you. He walked away because there was something unresolved in him. And unresolved things do not stay quiet forever. They surface. They ferment. They knock, eventually, on the door of the person who has been trying not to hear them. And when they knock loudly enough, he will look up from his life and understand. Not intellectually, but in his body, the way we understand grief, that the woman he had was the one, and that the reason he could not stay was not the reason he told himself, and that the freedom he chased was not freedom, and that the space he needed was not space, and that the reset button that he pressed did not reset anything except the level of loneliness he was going to have to live inside for the foreseeable future. He had no idea when he betrayed you that any of this was on the other side of that decision. He genuinely thought he was choosing peace. He was choosing consequence. And the consequence has a long tail. Your only job is to no longer be standing where he left you when the consequence catches up to him. I want to close by saying this. Your silence right now is not weakness. Your silence is the most articulate thing about you. It is the sound of a woman who has decided she is not going to negotiate for a place in a life that already had a door open to her and chose to close it. It is the sound of a woman who understands that the second she chases, she becomes the manager of his feelings instead of the author of her own. It is the sound of dignity, that word again, because it will keep being that word, quietly re-entering the room and taking its seat at the head of the table. You are not being cold. You are being clear. And clarity, from a woman who used to be endlessly available, is one of the most unsettling things a man like that can encounter. He didn't expect you to be quiet. He expected you to argue for him. He didn't expect you to keep living. He expected you to pause. He didn't expect you to grow. He expected you to preserve the version of you he could return to. And in each of those small refusals, you are doing the one thing he never learned how to do himself. You are choosing yourself without apology, without spectacle, and without needing him to witness it in order for it to count. He will find out eventually. He always does. But by the time he finds out, the finding out will not be your event. It will be his. And you by then will already be somewhere else. Not in a new relationship necessarily, not on a new continent, not in some cinematic reinvention, just somewhere else in yourself, fuller, steadier, harder to shake, easier to love, impossible to keep at arm's length ever again. That is not revenge, that is return. A return to the woman you were before you started making yourself smaller to keep someone who was never going to hold you at your full size. He had no idea betraying you would cost him that woman. He thought he was letting go of a girlfriend. He was letting go of the mirror that showed him who he could have been. You keep the mirror. It was never his to take. And the quiet you're sitting in tonight, the one that feels so heavy, is not the end of your story. It's the first honest chapter of it. The room is yours now. The lamp is yours. The evening is yours. The next morning is yours. And the woman waking up into it is not the one he left. She is the one he will spend a long time wishing he had known how to stay for. That is the whole of it. That is what he did not see coming. That is what you do not have to lift a finger to arrange. You already set it in motion the moment you stopped reaching. Keep not reaching. Keep living. Keep laying bricks. The rest will find him on its own.